Guys? It's so great to see you all. It's day 6 of the Teachable Summit. I'm here with Caleb. Caleb, it's great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me today.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I think I first spoke to you, I think when we were recording Million Dollar Instructor last year. One second, got a muting situation over here. But guys, it's so nice to see all your familiar faces in chat. Type in if you guys are here for the first session, if any of you here specifically for Caleb. I'm really excited because a lot of what we talked about so far has been, marketing growth, list building, more on the marketing side of things. I'm really excited about today. Just, we haven't spent much time on production, and I can't think of anyone better than Caleb to come talk about production. Actually, Caleb, say something. Let people see how nice your video looks right now compared to mine, and they'll know why you're the video expert.
Yeah, I mean, I can explain why it does, but I have like a window in front of me, and then I have a nice webcam that we'll talk about, and then I have it laid out perfectly. You have to show up for what your topic's about.
Yeah, and I'm here with like this shitty MacBook camera in this like office. But yeah, I'm super excited to have you here. We're gonna give it a couple of minutes for everyone to come in. Have you had a chance to catch a couple of the other sessions, Caleb? It's been amazing just to see kind of the involvement in chat, as you're going to see today. Most other presenters have been like, I've never seen such an active webinar chat through the entire presentation. So guys, everyone in chat, we got to live up to that this time and show Caleb just how pumped we are, including the guy whose name is I Am Pumped. He's definitely pumped. Guys, what is the one biggest thing you're hoping to learn today from Caleb? Like, what's the one thing? I don't know if you caught that, but someone in chat typed recently that, hey, I was actually going through Caleb's course and I just spent $600 like today. But I'm excited to see how else Caleb can teach me to spend money.
Yeah, the goal isn't always to spend money, but we'll talk about where to spend money when it makes sense and how to save money too. So it's cool to see people taking action on stuff.
Yeah, Bethany is saying, I hope there are tips on how to do this for less than $1 bajillion. Sharon wants to learn how to rock the videos. Someone says, do I need lighting? You can just use the sun, natural lighting. But yeah, I'm super excited. Even, the guy in chat, Cameron, was a photography major. He's also super excited to kind of like learn more about the video side of things. It's right over here. But yeah, really excited. Yeah, a lot of people want to see how to do video on a budget. Should I have a script or should I improvise? Awesome, that's great. Well, without any further ado, I think I'm just gonna hand it over to you and let you take it away.
Cool, sounds good. Let me share my screen here. Go ahead and share my keynote here. All right, so it's cool to see all the different things that people are wanting to actually learn about, because a lot of the things that people have talked about, how to use your smartphone, some video editing tips, what kind of gear they need, scripting, teleprompters, things like that. We're going to cover a lot in this. There are a lot of slides, but video is just such a big topic that I want to get through the technicalities of it. And then in the Q&A and a little bit more later, we can talk about how to use video really well for teaching as well. Not just the equipment and getting set up and stuff, but how to actually teach well on video. So I want to handle a lot of that in the question and answer later. So I run a video production company in San Diego, California. It's a 2-person team. We've been up and running for over a year now, full time. And I also run DIYvideoguy.com, where I teach video production online to people that have to do it themselves. So anyone that's a 1-person band and you have to set up the camera, then you have to sit down, focus it, and do all the shooting and recording, because that's what I've been doing for the last few years. As well as maybe you work at a company and you've had video pushed onto you and it's only part of your job. So those are kind of the 2 audiences that I teach to. So there are a lot of pieces of gear and equipment in this presentation. And so I wanted to link them all up for you guys, because otherwise you'll be opening tabs and you'll have to be typing in the name of something while I go through it quickly. But if you just open up this page, DIYvideoguy.com/teachable, there'll be a huge list of all the gear right there, all the software, everything I mentioned. So you can just pull that up and don't worry about writing a bunch of stuff down while we're going through it.
Sweet. That's the opposite advice. Normally we tell people we want your notes, we want you to like write down stuff, but this is great. You're so organized. It's awesome.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to advocate that you embrace DIY. You embrace using whatever you already have. We talked about someone that already spent $600 today on video equipment, and I've spent tens of thousands of dollars on equipment because it's my full-time job. But when I first got started, I started using a little point and shoot camera, started using my cell phone, started using whatever I possibly could. And so I want you guys to embrace that getting started. And I'll talk through different levels of equipment, how much you can spend and stuff like that. But when you're getting started, the most important thing is to just start with what you have and start making videos by yourself. And then later down the road, maybe, this is for course creators. So if you're making a course, maybe the first version, you do it by yourself. You talking to a webcam, you talking to your phone, you record your screen. And then when you make some money from the course, then you can hire somebody to do it. So I really, really encourage you to start making videos with whatever equipment you already have. Because if you look at some of the most popular videos online, something like Charlie Bit My Finger, who I think might have hit 1 billion views since the last time I updated this slide here. Evolution of Dance. This video was shot at the back of some auditorium in really crappy quality. Like the Sneezing Panda video. All these things look awful because this panda one, for example, is pulled from some other website before YouTube even existed, shot on some camera or some tiny little point and shoot before smartphones were even a thing. So know that not necessarily does your course or your video need to be super high quality. It can definitely help boost something up, but information and comedy and things like that can spread in video no matter what the quality of it is. Next, I'd like you to actually study and see what other people are doing online, teaching-wise, not just in your space, but in other spaces. So check out things outside of whatever it is you're trying to teach. Check out cooking videos, check out software tutorial videos, check out people that are teaching baseball to baseball coaches. Anything on somewhere like YouTube where someone's teaching, watch those videos, see what you like, see what you don't like. And when you're watching an educational video about a topic you don't care anything about, you look past what you're learning and you actually see how they're teaching it. And then you can write notes and say, well, don't do this, or don't say this, or I wish I would have had more words on screen so I could stick with what they're saying. So look at other courses out there, either free ones or paid, as well as videos just on YouTube that are more tutorial style, and see what people are doing and make notes about what you want to do in your videos. Next, new Star Wars movie coming out. You have to tell a story when you are doing a course. It can be really simple to just treat it like a textbook, A to Z, table of contents, every little piece that you think you should cover, you start to cover that in your videos. And really, you should have some sort of story overarching through your course. So if you're doing a course on knitting, you might start the course with the shopping piece and where to find things. And then you move on to more of the technique, and then end the course with something like how to then sell what you make on Etsy or something. So whatever course you're making, try to have some sort of story arc, and that will push people through to the end. So a few ways that you can actually have a story and have different texture to your courses is think in threes. Think of beginning, middle, and end, morning, afternoon, and evening. If you're teaching like a lifestyle course, maybe have some conflict in the beginning of your course where you can't figure out how to do something with the audience, and then you slowly figure out how to do it. So think of these threes. Think of a way to add a story arc into what you're doing. So I'm going to make a brief pause there before we go into equipment. If we want to take any questions, or if you wanted to chime in here a little bit about, some of the mentality around doing it yourself, seeing what other people are doing, and having your course be not just a bunch of bullet points and a boring PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah. What I personally would love to see too is how you guys are doing video right now. Like right now, you're doing just your webcam. Like where are people starting from? Like Are you guys using, do you have someone doing your video for you? What approach are you using right now? Just to kind of compare and contrast and see what approach you want to take after the presentation.
Yeah, so seeing what cameras people are using will be helpful. So any of that sort of stuff as we go through some of the tech, webcam, cheap camcorder, Canon, Nikon, a lot of different options people are using here. iPhone, nothing, Sony, ScreenFlow. So these are a lot of different things that we'll talk about actually. And it's good because you can use anything really. You can record right into your phone holding it out in front of you. You can record your screen using something like QuickTime or ScreenFlow, upload those videos directly. So there are a ton of options, and you really just need to choose what's the best for your course.
Yep.
So I have two main courses on my site. The first one is a video production course. A lot of that, if not all of it, is shot with me talking to a camera, explaining how things are positioned, how things are set up, where this goes, which button do you press, how do you set the settings on your camera. Then the course that we just launched last week is on software. It's on Adobe Premiere Pro. Almost all of that is recordings of my screen because, yeah, it might make sense for me to be on screen occasionally, and some of the lessons have that. But most of the time, I'm focused on the software. So if your course is all about something on a computer, you should really be doing a lot of screen recordings. If you're giving a presentation, you could flip back and forth between your slides like we're doing now, as well as the person talking. So you kind of have to go back and forth there a bit. So let's keep going into some of the equipment. I know people like to talk about this stuff, and we'll jump into it next. So with equipment, what you're really focused on first is your lighting and your environment. And I really advocate you starting with natural light. Right now, I don't have any lights set up. It's a beautiful sunny day in San Diego. I'm sitting in front of a window. There's no clouds. The light's not going to change. And I didn't have to set up a bunch of equipment, plug it all in, turn it all on, and make myself really warm in this room. So I advocate natural light. You can get decent light in just a room with a lot of windows. And the first step is just to put the window in front of you, not behind you. You can see here in this shot from a video series that Kevin Rose does called Foundation. When you put yourself in front of a window, you get this blown out white look because outside is so much brighter than you are. And the only way to combat that is to have a ton of light in the room that's as bright as the sun, which is nearly impossible. Now, this kind of look actually works pretty well when it's used subtly. So having a window here, and then have it lit nice on the person. But if you are just standing in front of a window, you'll be super dark, the window will be super bright, and it doesn't really work out. So put the window in front of you. Now to bump up to actually spending money on a single light. The cheapest option that I know of is to put one of these little LED panels on top of your camera. So if you have a DSLR, little point and shoot, anything that has one of these little cold shoe, hot shoe adapters that are usually used for putting flashes on cameras for photography. You can put one of those on your camera, turn it on, and you can sit right in front of your camera. And if you're close enough, that thing will light you up well. To move up from there, the other good single light is to use one of these ring lights. You actually put your camera right in the middle, and it lights you up pretty well, lights up the room. If you watch any beauty YouTubers, they're sitting really close to their camera because they're doing makeup and things like that. Almost all of them have one of these ring lights because it's a really pleasing look on someone's face. But the one caveat is if you wear glasses, you'll get this double ring thing going on. But if you ignore the double ring thing or you don't wear glasses, you can see it's a pretty pleasing look here on Chris over at Wistia. To go up to more lights than one, the cheapest option for some decent lights is this Cowboy Studio set on Amazon. It fluctuates around 170, 180 US dollars all the time. But this was my first set of lights, and I used these for 3 or 4 years before I upgraded. And they're not the strongest things. They're kind of chintzy. They take a lot of time to set up, but if you can throw them in a closet and pull them out when you need them, this is a good way to get a couple lights in front of you, another light on the background, or behind you to add some texture, and keep going from there. And then something else you can do is have a setup like Wistia has, where they put a light behind the subject. So they're in front of a plain, either paper backdrop or just a plain wall, but to give it a little bit more texture, they put a light against the wall. So you can see here, this is what their old setup used to look like. They had 2 lights in front of them, 1 light here pointed at the wall, and that gives this little glow behind the wall. Okay, next, let's go to framing. And with framing, you want to think of the rule of thirds, and instead of putting yourself way to one side or directly in the middle often, try to position yourself over to one side. This will get really helpful when you start to put things like text on screen. So you can put yourself on one side of the frame, and you can put text coming up on the left side of the frame. This will help with bullet points, telling people what's about to happen in the video you're talking about. And you can have different setups. This is basically like a slide to the right here of Chris, and then they put the video on the left. And I really think that having text on screen, especially in courses, is pretty important for retaining information. And so I would do a little bit more text on screen, bullet points, things like that, than I would in a normal kind of video. So definitely think about your framing and how you can position yourself so that you have room to do some of those things. Next is bokeh, which is a word for having your background blurred out. And this is one of the questions I get the most, is how do you blur out a background? I know Amici is on here in the chat, and this is something that I helped him with and figure out how to do it. And so now he gets that in his videos now. And to get this, you have to do a few things. Number one is the further distance between you and your background helps. That'll make it more blurred out, so it'll be further away. And the other thing is the lens. And so lenses have different apertures, which are how big the opening is on the lens. And the bigger the opening, the less that's in focus. The smaller the opening, the more that's in focus. So your lens will have different numbers on it that you can set the aperture to on your camera. The lower the number, if you go down to 2.8 or something, less will be in focus. The higher the number, more will be in focus. So this gets a little bit more technical, but I always get to ask this question: how do I blur my background? How do I have it separate myself from the background? Add some distance, have a lens that can shoot with a lower aperture, and that's how it's going to start to blur out a bit. Okay, so now let's talk cameras. So first up, I really do advocate using your smartphone. Now, the newest iPhones have 4K video on them, which is complete overkill for doing things like a course video. But to start with an iPhone, there are a few things you need. Number one, you should have something to hold the iPhone or Android or Windows Phone or BlackBerry, whatever you have, in place and onto a tripod. My favorite accessory for this is the Glyph by Studio Neat. It's adjustable for any size phone, and then it has a little tripod screw at the bottom here. Then you're going to need some sort of tripod to attach that to. So whether you have a tripod laying around already, or you just need something mobile like these Gorilla Pods, this is another good option to attach that Glyph to the top of, snap your phone in place, and then you can hold it out, or you can set it on a stack of books or whatever. But between these two, you're probably going to spend around $40 to $60, and then your videos are going to be steady if you're holding it, or you have a place to set your phone and actually record. If you want to make really good looking videos on your phone, you might not want to use the built-in video recording app. So one I recommend is Filmic Pro, and this one actually has the ability to lock focus, lock exposure, so that's not changing throughout your video, and I would definitely check out this app. Now, if you're not going to use a smartphone and you're going to be doing things like this, webinars, screen recordings, teleseminars, any of that sort of thing, I would invest in a webcam. This is the webcam I'm currently using. There are people in the chat saying the video looks good. It's definitely a step up from built-in cameras inside of laptops and displays and things like that. And this camera always gets me compliments, and it was only $75, and it does make a huge difference. Now, the video you're watching right now in this Hangout is being compressed by Google, put on YouTube and streamed, and so it's not as good as it could be. But if you're using one of these cameras and you're recording into something like QuickTime or ScreenFlow on the Mac or Camtasia on a PC, the quality can be really, really good. This thing shoots at 1080p. It can look really, 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 really great next to your slides. You could put yourself down in the corner and have the slides up, so there's still a little bit more of a personal connection. So that would definitely be something that I would recommend spending money on if you're doing screen recordings or things like this, little webinars. To go into cameras, if you're going to spend a little bit more than on a webcam or making your phone work, this is the 3 set of Canon DSLRs that I recommend getting started with. You can get older versions, and the only things that you're getting in these newer ones right now are better autofocus typically. So the T6i has pretty good autofocus. The 70D has pretty good autofocus versus if you have something like a T4i or a T5i or even the 60D, those things aren't as good with autofocus, but sometimes for half the price, you can get one of the older ones used. And what really matters is getting some good lenses. So a 50mm lens is a good focal length for talking head videos, depending on how big your room is. If you're in a smaller room, you're going to have to get a wider lens, something like a 24 or a 40 or 35. If your room's really big and you want to have more zoom and place that camera further away and get a better blurred background, go to like an 85 or a 105 or a 135. And the reason that I recommend getting fixed lenses is so you can shoot at that lower aperture, 1.8, 2.2, 2.5, to get that blurred background. If you're using a lens that comes with one of these cameras stock, it's probably going to be a zoom lens, and it probably can't go to a very low aperture. So you might not get that blurred background that you want. And next we have microphones. So let's start with some microphones for iPhones. This is a Zoom IQ6, and I've seen this attached to people's iPhones, and it's really good for putting it close to you, so you could put it in your pocket. I've seen people do interviews this way where they just hold out their phone and they have this microphone and they hold it back and forth between people. This is a pretty good option for doing that kind of recording. If you're going to be doing talking head videos and course videos, I'd recommend checking out the SmartLav Plus. This is about an $80 microphone from Rode. It plugs right into your iPhone. So I've seen people take one phone to record with, another phone with a SmartLav plugged in, and then they put that microphone recorder in their pocket. And with 2 iPhones, you could essentially shoot a 4K video, sync up the audio and video later, which I'll show you how to do in a little bit, and be good to go. So with things in your pocket, plus a SmartLav and a little tripod, for $100 or so, you can start recording some pretty good videos. For an inexpensive microphone that's going to actually go into an audio recorder, this is the cheapest one that I found that sounds pretty good, and it'll plug in with a little small, I think it's a 1/8 jack into an audio recorder. If you want a better lavalier and you're looking to spend more money or build out like a studio, I have a couple of these Audio-Technica AT899s. And the best thing about these is that they come with a lot of different attachments, ways to hide it under shirts or clip it on different kind of clothing. Specifically, when I go to shoot and it's a female talent on camera, this microphone's really helpful because of blouses and different kinds of shirts and dresses and things like that that don't always have something really simple to clip to, like a guy's button-up shirt would. And another option is just to get a microphone that runs directly into your camera. So the one I recommend for this is the Rode VideoMic Pro. They have a couple other options. They have a mini and a micro, and some of those go on phones and some of those go onto DSLRs like this. But the best part about this is you can just plug it directly into your camera, and then you don't have to worry about syncing up your audio and video later. Next up, audio recorders. This would be what you plug in some of these microphones into. And I have 3 here from Tascam. This one would be perfect to go along with the Sony microphone. So for $125, you can get a good quality lavalier and recorder to put down by you and record some good sound that you then sync up with your phone or whatever later. Going next up to the DR40, this one has 2 XLR inputs. So this would be if you're willing to spend a little bit more money on this Audio Technica or maybe a shotgun microphone that you're going to put just out of screen. And then if you're doing more complex recordings with multiple people on screen, some sort of interview format, this might be the better option for you to spend a little bit more and get some more options. Okay, last piece of gear here until the Q&A part, teleprompters. So if you have a really detailed course, it probably makes more sense to script it out. And the best way to stick to that script is either to use a teleprompter, which I'll show you a cheap option of in a second, or to have the script just off screen and break it into chunks and try to memorize a chunk, then deliver that to camera until you get it right, then go to the next chunk, deliver that part to the camera, keep going till you get it right. And you just do that until you get through your entire script. So I've done it that way where I script it and kind of deliver it the best I can. Then I script it and use a teleprompter. Sometimes I go off an outline. Sometimes I just wing it. My favorite way to do it is to have a detailed outline and then not try to hit word for word. I feel like it comes across the most natural that way. And I can also like stay on track and be a little bit more entertaining than me staring at a script, trying to memorize something. And if the word's off, then I have to restart, or staring into a camera and having a teleprompter. So I would really challenge you to try shooting videos without having to use a teleprompter. I think it adds a little bit more complexity that doesn't really need to be there. So definitely try to use just a script or just some outlines and do the best you can delivering that way first. I have a more expensive version of this setup from a company called ICANN, IKAN, but this is the cheapest one that I've found that seems to work pretty well. And you basically mount your camera behind. It has some glass here that reflects off the iPad. And then you can run a teleprompting app. Right now I'm using Teleprompter 3 Plus as my app for the iPad. And so if you already have an iPad or some other tablet laying around, you can get this little setup, and then comes with a little cloth to block out any of the light reflecting off the glass. And this is a very good example of DIY. This thing is not very expensive. It's pretty cheap, but it gets the job done and will let you get through your scripts and get through your videos a little faster. So that was a lot of gear. And like I said, it's on DIYvideoguide.com/teachable for all the links to all of those things. But there is a lot of gear, and I'm sure there have been a lot of questions in the chat.
Oh, it's crazy. I don't know. I think it might make sense to batch a lot of that towards the end because there's so many questions. If you want to handle one or two, that could be cool. But otherwise, there's very, very specific questions in the chat.
Yeah, so I'll answer like 2 or 3, and then we'll keep going.
Yeah.
Rode Smart Lab Plus is not for iPhones only. You can plug that into Android phones. You can plug it into some of the audio recorders and things. Yeah, KR just typed in Teleprompter 3 Plus is the app that I'm using on my iPad. Can you run? Let's see.
The chat is moving so fast.
Yeah, I got to hold down on the scroll on the right. Blue Yeti is a great microphone. I'm using it right now. It's a perfect $100 option for this kind of thing where you don't want the mic on screen, and you can run it right into your computer for screen recordings. This is what I started podcasting with. This is what I started teaching with. It's a great microphone, and I'm still using it to this day. Okay, that was 3.
Yeah, we'll batch them all. So we have 30 minutes of Q&A at the end, guys. So I recommend sticking around. We can get very, very specific there. For now, I think, yeah, let's just keep going through this. By the way, Caleb, just a mid-presentation shout out, guys. How cool has this been? This is just stuff that, I can't think of anyone else would be better to talk about this, because, you just have this unique experience of knowing online courses and video, like at a very deep level, versus all of us that are just trying to figure it out as we go along. So this is great. Keep going.
And someone asked if I can put this, I'll put a PDF of this presentation on that page right when we're done as well.
Awesome.
Okay, so let's get into some of the editing piece, because this is where I see a lot of people get frustrated. The shooting video part, being on camera, is hard enough already, but then you have to put it on your computer and you have to make something out of it. So I'm just going to share a few tips for some of the most asked questions that I get, and we'll go from there. So the first one I get a lot is if I'm using one camera to record video, another to record audio, whether that's a DSLR and one of these expensive microphone setups I've talked about, or it's simply two iPhones, how do you sync it together? So this is a screenshot from Final Cut Pro 10, and on the top here is a video track that has audio in it, and the bottom is an audio track. And the biggest thing to do is actually line up the waveforms. So you can see here, when you get really zoomed in, you can see how this peak and then these two big ones match with this peak and these two big ones. And so you actually have to get into the nitty-gritty and do it manually if you're using something like iMovie, or even if you're using something more advanced and you want to do it yourself. So that would be one way to do it. And I try to make this as easy as possible by, at the very beginning of my videos, I'll do one loud clap. At the end, I'll do another clap. So I have those 2 points to sync up the audio. That's why on movie sets and television, they use the clapper, because they're recording the audio separately from the video cameras. You can also try to trust your software to do it automatically. This is a screenshot of Final Cut Pro 10, where you right-click on the video and the audio and sync them together. It will do the analysis of figuring out where those waveforms are of the different cameras. And so it does a better job when you have good microphone plugged into your camera and a good microphone plugged into your audio recorder. So I'll use that VideoMic Pro on each of my cameras so that I have a decent source of audio, not only as a backup, but as a really good way for me to sync up with my lavalier or any other kind of microphone that I'm using. You can also do this in something like Adobe Premiere Pro, but if you're using, let's say, iMovie, Windows Movie Maker, ScreenFlow, you're going to have to probably get into the nitty-gritty of the waveforms. So I highly recommend doing the claps at the beginning, maybe throughout, so you can sync up your video really well. And just a tip here for anyone that's doing a lot of multiple camera shoots, I use an app called Plural Eyes, and that allows me to bring in a bunch of different cameras, a bunch of different audio sources, sync them up, and then I can export them to Final Cut Pro or to something like Premiere Pro. Next, my biggest tip for faster editing is, while you're recording, to actually give your future self notes. So this could be you if you're editing it, or even if you're having somebody else edit it, give them notes. So while I'm recording, I will talk to the camera and say, I really liked the fourth take, but the third take might be good too. And that way, when you're watching it back later, you're editing it later, someone else is editing it, they have those notes as well. And then the biggest trick that I have is, anytime you make a mistake that you would want to cut out, is make some sort of audible sound so that in the waveforms, you see these spikes. So how this would work when I'm recording a video would be, if I'm trying to get a line and I mess up, I go like this. And then I see a chunk of audio where I've talked for a bit. Then I see these 3 spikes, and I know that the part right before those 3 spikes is a mistake. And so I don't have to watch it. I don't have to listen to it. I don't have to see if it's a good take. I just know that that part is me messing up. And so if you get in the habit of doing this, every time you mess up, you go, make some sort of audible cadence where it's spikes like this, then you can actually get through your edit really fast by not having to watch everything. So if I do this every single time I make a mistake, and I don't do it every time I get through a line properly, I can cut the first draft of my video in a minute or two, because I just go through quickly, cut out all the mistakes, I have all the good takes, line them up, and I'm getting ready to go pretty quick there. And just a quick note on when you're editing specifically courses, like we're talking about here, to do something and explain it and have a bunch of intricacies, it's really helpful to put text on the screen when you're saying quotes, when you're saying something technical, when you're saying something that's really, really important. And you can either do this on the bottom of the screen while you're on the screen, or the software you're showing is on screen, or you can put it full on the screen. And what's really helpful is when you put it full on the screen and you read it, that they're getting two sources of that information. They're hearing you and they're reading it themselves or seeing the text. But you can also not talk for a section and let them read something. So the only time that I would talk while there's full screen text on screen is if you're saying exactly what's on the screen. It's really, really hard to have a lot of text on screen and then expect people to try to read it, and you're talking about something else. So if I brought up something on screen right now that had a lot of text on it and I wanted you to read it, and then I started talking about something else, you wouldn't retain both of those things, and you might retain neither. So if you put full screen on text, either read it or be silent. And then the second to last little chunk here is on software and the different options there are for software. So if you're on Windows, it comes with Movie Maker, which I don't have a Windows computer, so I haven't used this, but it is the free option. And I do have people in my audience that still make their YouTube videos, their courses using this. If you're on a Mac, I would use iMovie to start off with. If you are getting into video editing and video creation, it's also free. And there are pretty decent iMovie apps on phones as well as tablets. So try those out. If you're shooting on your phone, you can put together little videos that way. If you're going to go next to recording your screen and talking into a webcam, if you're on a Mac, the best option is ScreenFlow. It's about $100. You can record your screen, record audio from a microphone that goes right into your computer. You can add text on screen, transitions, add in music. You can do a lot of things. And like I said about our Premiere course that just came out last week, I made that 90% in ScreenFlow. I didn't use a camera to record most of it. If you're on Windows, unfortunately, your option is a little bit more expensive. Camtasia is an option on Windows. It's just more expensive, does similar things. The ability to record your screen, record audio, record your webcam, record video. And there are some online options for doing these as well. So just look into Record My Screen on Google. And someone here talked about, what about a Chromebook? That might be an option if you only have a web-based system. If you're going to get into more professional productions, I recommend using something like Adobe Premiere Pro or something like Final Cut Pro 10 if you're on a Mac. Final Cut Pro 10 is a little bit easier to learn, especially if you're familiar with iMovie at all, but it's only on the Mac, whereas Premiere is on Mac and PC. And if you have really complex things you want to do, you want to have really good color correcting, and you have multiple angles you're editing and doing a lot more, I would definitely try something like Premiere. And then finally, hosting. So if you're on a platform that doesn't have video hosting built into it, these are some of the options. You could use something like YouTube, but it's really hard to customize that player if you're embedding it in some sort of course software or something. And you have to go through and unlist all your videos because you don't want them to be public and for people to be able to find them. something like video or Vimeo is decent and is pretty affordable to use, but the platform's not built for course videos. So when you're going through and trying to figure out which video to pull in, it's not very easy. You don't get a lot of good stats for who's watching your videos, who's not watching them, things like that. Wistia is an option if you have videos embedded on your own site. They're really good. Go ahead.
A quick note about Wistia is we bundle in Wistia for anyone on any Teachable account. So we pay your Wistia bill and we use them on the back end. So if you already are on Teachable, that's what your videos are running on right now.
So that's perfect, because I was just going to say Wistia is the best option for this kind of thing because of the stats you get in there, the customizations. You can embed transcripts right into them. You can have checkpoints throughout the video. So if you have an hour-long video, you can have people click through to the different parts of it. So Wistia is the best option for these kinds of videos, in my opinion.
We're doing like 70 terabytes of video a month on Wistia right now.
They probably love you guys then.
Well, but I think we make up for it by hosting like 400,000 videos or something. So I don't even know if they're even making enough.
Yeah. And then the last option is to try to self-host it on like Amazon S3 or something like that. And it gives you a little bit more control if you're really worried about people maybe downloading the videos or stealing them or sharing them or something like that. But it's more complicated to set up. It's harder to manage, and streaming video from S3 can get pretty expensive. So something like Teachable having Wistia built in is pretty great. And then I have a few slides here quickly about practicing teaching through live streaming. So doing webinars, doing things like Periscope, doing Meerkats, going on Blab, doing some practice through your teaching, I think is really, really important, because you'll get more comfortable on camera, and with there being a live audience, you get that feedback. So I would definitely